So we don't have to know.
Okay, great. So everybody, welcome to the ADR meeting. I'm Mark Kruchnit. I'm calling it to order at the moment. The first order of business is that I'll let the members of the ADR briefly introduce themselves. Like I said, I'm Mark Kruchnit and Ross resident.
I'm Steven Sutro.
I'm Laura Dewar, also a Ross resident.
Mark Fritz, same.
Joey Buckingham, can you guys see me?
I cannot, but we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, you are dark, Joey.
Yeah,
But we can't hear you.
my video's on. I don't know what's going on here. I love Zoom.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll let you work on that and we'll.
Okay.
we'll
Hi,
move
everyone.
along. So the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from October 19th, a 28-minute meeting where we had one project. I read over the minutes and they are fine to me. Would someone else like to second approving the minutes?
Second, Joey.
Thank you. Now is open time for public comments where anybody can speak for up to 3 minutes on items not on the agenda. I would actually like to go first and thank Patrick for his service and say it's been a pleasure. Patrick Streeter, who is leaving after this week. It's been a pleasure working with him. I wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors. He's part of the great quitting of 2021 and 2022, as many people have used this opportunity to find even better jobs than the one they had. And I wish him the best and hope that it works out perfect as he gets to spend more time with his family, working closer to his family. So thank you, Patrick, and it's been truly a pleasure. I'm sad that you're leaving for us, but happy for you.
I agree and second that emotion. Thank you very much, Patrick, for your great work for all of us. Thank you.
I'm great being part of this team, so thank you very much. I've really enjoyed my time with the ADR group and with Ross.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to make any other comment for an item not on the agenda? Okay, so as we move on to the planning applications, for those of you who might not have attended ADR meetings before, the way it works is when we open up a project, the town speaks first about the project, then the project applicant has a chance to present the project. The ADR members at that time can ask questions of the applicant and the applicant's team and or the town to clarify anything. After that, we open it up to the public, where any member of the public can comment on any project for up to 3 minutes. And then we bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations to the town council. Tonight's a little bit unusual in that the last 2 items are so close to my house that I'm going to be recusing myself. And so Joey will be taking over, assuming she's able to do that, even though people don't see her. It should be fine. If not, someone else. Oh, now we see Joey. Great. So Joey can take over for those last 2 projects. And since I'm recusing myself, I will probably just lead the meeting at that point, since they're the last 2 items.
Hey, Mark, before you get started, did the ADR members get a chance to meet Krista Johnson, our town manager, who's on the meeting?
We did briefly. Thank you,
Okay, great.
Elizabeth. She introduced herself,
Okay,
and
perfect.
we look forward to getting to know her better. I also got to see 3 or 4 hours of her at the town council meeting, the
I think
very
it was
brief town
6.
council meeting that took place. I think that was last week now. Yes, last week.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, fine, thank you.
So the first order of business is the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project. So I'll let the town go over this first before we open it up to the quote unquote applicant.
Great. Thank you, Chair, ADR group members, Planner Matthew Weintraub. I will share my screen and my presentation. So the item before you is, as stated, the planning application for Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project. So project background, this is phase one. The objective is, of course, to reduce flood risk, and that can be described much better by the flood district when they have a chance to give their presentation. So I'll be just kind of giving an overview. On May 13th of last year, the Ross Town Council recommended adoption of Alternative 1, which avoids impacts to Frederick Allen Park. On August 17th of last year, the Marin County Board of Supervisors adopted the final EIR for Alternative 1 as recommended by the Town Council. And now the Flood District has come to the town seeking approval of design review and the issuance of construction permits prior to beginning project activity. The project location is Corte Madera Creek between Lagunitas Bridge and the Ross Kentfield boundary. The project site includes the Lagunitas Bridge right-of-way, 3 parcels owned by the town of Ross, 9 parcels owned by the Flood Control District, and 5 privately owned residential parcels. I'm actually not going to share that many visuals during my presentation. I'm going to let the Flood District really show the details of the project. Project summary, construction is scheduled for approximately 18 months between June of this year and all of 2023. Major project components include removing the existing wood fish ladder, which is essentially an obstruction in the channel, regrade, stabilize, and revegetate the creek bed and the banks at existing constriction point, remove existing wood retaining walls, extend the concrete wing walls no higher than the existing grade at the tops of banks, and construct new fish resting pools within the channel. A design review permit is requested. The project meets several of the thresholds for design review. I won't go through those details here. The details are included in the staff report, and I can cover any details that are requested. Public notice area, as for all design review applications, was 300 feet. There were no written comments received in response to the notice. And to conclude, staff requests that the ADR group allow public comment, discuss the merits of the project, and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding consistency with design review. That concludes my initial introduction to the project. I would like to now turn it over to Joanna Dixon with the Flood Control District, and I believe she would like to present further information on the project. I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh. Hello, thank you for having us. Good evening. I'm Joanna Dixon from the Marin County Flood Control District. We appreciate your time and interest in reviewing our details of the proposed Corte Madera Creek Flood Restoration Project, or Flood Risk Management Project, rather. The Flood District is a separately funded district, which is staffed by employees of the county and funded through the tax revenues and fees that are collected from property owners within the limits of the Flood Zone District Zone 9. And the district seeks to manage and use the funding collected locally and any grant money that may be available to help reduce the risk of flooding. And the district often partners with municipalities and other local groups to deliver projects that meet these objectives. So as you know, this project has been in the cooker for a long, long time, and we're hopeful that we might finally get to make some improvements within your jurisdiction. Aside from any local management of Corte Madera Creek by the town of Ross, the last significant project that addressed flooding concerns in this area dates back to the construction of the concrete channel in coordination with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers back in the late 1960s. So it's been a while coming. The wooden fish ladder structure that everyone's familiar with at the upstream end of the existing concrete channel was never intended to be a permanent structure. And it has restricted flow from the upstream natural channel from being able to flow easily and enter the concrete channel downstream. And it also restricts fish migration up in the upstream direction to only a very limited opportunity for fish within certain flow conditions. So too much flow, the fish get blown out of the channel, and too little flow, they don't have enough water depth to jump up into the natural channel. So our currently proposed project is funded by a grant from the State Department of Water Resources with the intent to both reduce the risk of flooding to the neighboring communities and also to improve fish migration with a restoration component. And these project improvements extend down through Kentfield to the lower end of the existing concrete channel. But tonight we're just going to focus on the portions of the project design that impact the town of Ross. This project has been discussed at many public meetings over the last 2 years and has completed the CEQA environmental review process, as Matthew referred back in August of 2021. And with input from the town of Ross, the current project proposed does not include any modifications to the existing Frederick Allen Park area. So we hope to obtain the necessary approvals and then begin construction within Ross this summer 2022. We need to take advantage of the existing grant funding before its expiration. And we're still doing our best to try to seek opportunities to extend that grant funding through 2023, but more likely we'll be completing whatever construction we can get to within 2022. So tonight, members of the design team in attendance include Raymond Wong, who's our GHD consultant project manager. And we have Matt Smeltzner from Geomorph Design, who's the project engineer and geomorphologist. And he's been responsible for developing the project components within the natural channel section within town of Ross. And I'll introduce now Gerhard Epke, who's the project planner with Raymond's team at GHD. Thanks so much. Gerhard?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So the purpose of this project, as has been stated, is to reduce the flood risk in Ross Common and down Poplar Avenue by removing this wooden wall and fish ladder. It blocks the creek as it transitions into the concrete channel, and providing a smoother flow transition from the natural creek to the concrete channel means matching the channel bed elevation, so lowering the creek bed upstream, removing this and letting the channel lower this amount, which gains capacity in the creek. But in order to do that, this also entails protecting the creek banks upstream from the effects of the creek scouring and cutting deeper.
Hey, Gerhard, if you're sharing,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't see anything if you're sharing any
Oh,
screen.
really? Oh, sorry.
Can anybody else see
Yeah,
the screen?
here we go.
Thank
Is that
you.
working now? Yeah.
Yes.
Is that working now? Okay. Sorry. So the this is my second slide. This was my first slide, which was just a picture of the wooden fish ladder from across the creek from Ross Common. Also, a couple of these slides have include the flagging that is out in the field right now, indicating the tops of the proposed retaining walls. So hopefully some of you had a chance to see that. As has been mentioned, this is part of a larger project that extends all the way down the concrete channel. We're only going to be talking about the portion within the town of Ross. Another part of the project that is within the town of Ross is improving the existing fish resting pools downstream from the fish ladder in the concrete channel. But we're not really going to dwell on that. We're going to focus on this area. So this is probably familiar to you. Here's the Lagunitas Road Bridge, the upstream extent of the project. The creek is here along the parking lot. This is the post office building. These are private residences along Sir Francis Drake. And then right here, where the bike path kind of starts, or there's a porta potty right here and a little way to look through the chain link fence at the upstream end of the concrete channel. That's basically the downstream end of the portion that we're talking about today. So this slide shows the major structural aspects of the project. 4 retaining walls are at or below the adjacent grade. These 2 that are at the downstream end are extensions of the concrete channel walls going upstream and sort of flaring out to focus the flow into the channel. Another short, low retaining wall is right behind the Ross Post Office. And then with this sheet pile wall on the opposite bank, it is also doing the sort of funneling of the flow into the center of the creek and stabilizing the bank. This sheet pile wall, which I'll show some pictures of later, sits lower than the top of the bank. It actually sits at the bottom of a series of existing retaining walls, and is intended to preserve and protect those retaining walls in place as the channel has a chance to scour a little bit deeper. But in order to keep the channel from scouring too deep, there are proposed grade control structures at the downstream and upstream end of the project. So this is an example of a grade control structure. On the left, we have a cross-section, a hypothetical cross-section of the creek, and rocks, boulders, large rocks or boulders are buried in and embedded in the channel bed, which allows the channel to scour down to a certain depth, but not any deeper, so that the effects of the project don't propagate upstream in a big storm or undermine the lip of the concrete channel as it's flowing in. I included this picture on the right as a similar example. This is on Ross Creek, just upstream from Shady Lane Bridge. The sanitary district removed a wood or a concrete weir across the creek and installed something similar, which it sort of looks like it's also called a roughened ramp. And just, yeah, you know, it's pretty hard to identify if you don't know what you're looking at. At the base of and adjacent to the concrete and sheet pile retaining walls is bank stabilization in the form of rock slope or riprap. These are placed boulders, it's shown in the shaded gray areas. So here's an example. These boulders resist scour, protect the channel, or protect the stream bank from erosion, and will be planted. I'll get into the planting plan in a second. Higher on the bank where it gets disturbed will be some erosion control fabric and vegetated soil lifts shown in tan here. So this is a slide that shows the trees that are proposed for removal. There's a total of 11 trees that we're planning on removing, mostly clustered right at the downstream end of the natural portion of the creek as it goes into the concrete channel. And this is a view of that. So you can see the trees are largely in the channel in the creek, and on this portion of the bank that will be opened up and graded back to give more capacity to the creek. There's also 3 trees up here behind the post office that will be removed, also where it gets graded and where this concrete retaining wall goes. This is a picture of the planting plan that you know, includes native riparian fire-resistant species. The species are listed here. Generally, the concept that we're following is upland species and larger trees get planted higher on the bank to, in time, grow a riparian canopy and provide shading and good habitat for the for the creek itself. Down on the channels, we'll have more brushy things like willows and elderberries that can take a beating at high flow, and then sedges, coffeeberry, flowering currant. In and adjacent to the riprap, there'll be live willow stakes and rooted willows. So that's all along the channel where it gets disturbed with riprap and walls. So this is moving into things that I think will be more visible to the public, and this is a change to the fence line. So currently there's a 4-foot black fence that goes from the beginning of the concrete channel upstream all along this bike path area. And for the most part, that remains undisturbed. There's an access gate here near the post office that will be used. But this section where there's green and orange dotted lines will be, the fence will be demolished as part of the construction of that retaining wall. And plans propose extending the 6-foot fence farther upstream along the top of the retaining wall, in part to protect anybody from inadvertently jumping over and having a bigger fall than they expect. And it also pushes the fence towards the creek a little bit, so moves it away from the bike path, providing a little more space there. Some more about sort of what the visual impacts of the project would be. This is looking downstream from the Lagunitas Road Bridge. Here, the channel, the gravel in the middle of the creek would be expected to lower itself by a foot, maybe a foot or two, which would largely be indiscernible, I think. The structural elements of the project are farther downstream. So here is where rock slope would be, the sheet pile wall is here, and then the right bank gets cut off back there behind the trees. So when the trees leaf out, it will be pretty hard to see from the Lagunitas Road Bridge. From the post office, if you walk towards the creek and look over that 4-foot chain link fence, this is the view of the creek, and the flagging indicates the top of those walls. In the foreground is the concrete wall number 3. It sits down at grade and slopes down as you go downstream. Looking across the creek, the sheet pile wall would be here. The top of it would be where the spray paint and flagging is. So you can see how it's sitting at the bottom of these other retaining walls. It's about 2 feet above the existing grade, but with scouring and during dry season, more of it might be visible. Here's some examples of sheet pile walls. There's one just downstream from the post office underneath this section of fence. There's one across from Town Hall. Here's another one. You know, the one proposed is steel, but they come in vinyl and can be colored in different ways. I included this panoramic picture so that you can kind of imagine what it would look like there. On the right, you can see the flagging of where the top of the wall would go. And so it would go down into the water line and maybe, you know, a foot or two below that when the water is dry, depending on the pattern of scour in any individual year. And then finally, the place where the focus of this project would be visible is through the chain link fence at the transition point. So this wooden wall would be removed, and we would see something like this where the concrete walls extend upstream on either side. This picture in the top right shows what it currently looks like when the vegetation gets cut back on the far bank. So there is a wooden retaining wall there. It would be a concrete wall that would extend upstream instead. The riprap and the rock slope that is currently there would be, you know, in a different place. It would be moved upstream and sit lower down, but it would have that same kind of look over time. And then in the foreground here, this is the rock. This is the grade control structure. So the boulders peeking out that sit deep in the bed, and then the gravels that are allowed to move over the top of them. And then my last slide is just of the existing concrete channel wall and that patterning along the top, you know, just to kick off a discussion about the aesthetics. This is something that we could mimic. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you. See if I can figure out how to stop this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone on the ADR have any questions for the applicant?
I have one, and I'm a little embarrassed to ask it because I have no expertise in hydrology or any of these things that you have so carefully figured out. But I am wondering, are there any alternatives to that sheet pile wall? The one that looks the kind of the most unnatural or manufactured? Is there anything that would work just as well, that would be more natural looking and that we could afford?
I can start to answer that, Joey. Thank you for asking, and no question is unwanted here, so feel free to ask away. We did consider initially doing more of the vegetated rock along the front of those existing privately owned creek stabilization walls, both the vertical concrete wall and the gabion baskets. But unfortunately, in order to have a more higher level of certainty that we're not going to experience scouring that would impact those very expensive private property improvements, the rock slope protection would need to extend out at a lesser slope further into the center of the existing creek channel, which, as Gerhard pointed out, that's close to where a cluster of all those trees need to be removed in order to widen the existing channel and try to fit as much water capacity in that shape of the cross section of the creek that we can. So that's why we sort of ruled out putting the rock slope protection in front of those two features. And sheet pile allows us to have the smallest linear foot disturbance without possibly damaging those existing private property improvements. So we've been through this discussion several times now with the regulatory agencies, which it's also not their preference to see something like a sheet pile wall or a vertical concrete wall if there are other alternatives. So we have done some consideration of
I
other,
figured, but worth the
other
question.
methods, but this unfortunately seems to be the least impact. So with the most
Thank you.
benefit, I'll say.
Okay,
And-
great, thanks.
And Joey, that's just 2 feet at the bottom of existing 8 to 12 foot high retaining walls.
Right, right. I mean,
So I guess-
the one that's there is pretty ugly and pretty big, but that's not gonna be there anymore, right? It's gonna be under.
Well, no, those retaining walls will stay. It's just the 2 feet underneath those ugly retaining walls that will
Okay.
change.
Okay, got it. I misunderstood that.
Okay.
I
I
do
have
have
another
a
quick,
question.
maybe two. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Laura, go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. I was just wondering, the decision for the chain link fence to be not painted black, but to be the steel, is there a thought process behind that, just so we could understand that decision?
Sure. The district doesn't really have a preference whether it's steel or black vinyl coated chain link fence. I think the thought for our proposed design is just that the existing 6-foot fence is currently a steel colored, not black colored fence. And as we extend the concrete wing wall, retaining wall structure that will replace the removed wooden wall in the upstream direction, we wanted to add height to the existing fencing so that because the drop off is much more significant. If anybody should climb and want to get in that channel, if they fall, they would have a much farther distance to fall and potentially hurt themselves. So we thought it was appropriate to extend the 6-foot height of fence along the new concrete wall. But, you know, if the town prefers that it be the black vinyl coated or a different color, you know, that's fine. At some point it's transitioning between the silver fencing and the black fencing anyway. So it doesn't much matter to us where that transition occurs.
Is the chain link a foregone conclusion? Is that for sure? There are reasons it needs to be a chain link fence as opposed to, say, for example, like a hog wire fence with a wood top or something that looks a little more residential?
I see. Well, mostly the consideration given thus far has just been to, you know, match what existing fencing materials are present on site currently. The district tends to prefer use of chain link fence as opposed to, say, a wood fence because it lasts longer and costs less over time for the district to maintain that type of fence. In other areas, maybe not in Ross so much, we do have a lot of breaches to fencing, and so chain link fence is pretty easy to repair without having to replace significant portions of it. Yeah, again, you know, whatever the town's preference is, I think we would be amenable to consider.
What, 2 questions from me. You mentioned that the sheet pile can come in multiple finishes, call it. Do you guys have a proposal what that sheet pile finish is?
My preference is for the steel finish. I think it weathers a little bit more. It's weird to say naturally, but as it ages, it gets that kind of rust patina, which tends to blend better into the existing background, just the coloring of that rust finish. I think Gerhard showed one that's directly behind the post office, which you can't see unless you really jump over the existing black fence. But it's down there and it has a more weathered look to it that seems more natural, even though it's a metal surface. And then I guess from the design perspective, my concern would be that if we chose a colored vinyl type sheet pile material, you know, I imagine that we're going to experience some very hard potential bedrock conditions as we try to drive those sheet piles down into the creek bed. And so I would just have a concern that the other materials, the vinyl or whatever other coating we have, might not hold up as well as we pound them into the ground. But if anyone from GHD wants to speak to this design consideration, feel free to join in.
That's fine. Just extending Joey's earlier idea about, yeah, so if you utilize the sheet pile, could you actually disguise it a little bit by placing those boulders partially embedded in the base of the, instead of extending that out, I got the point about increasing the maximum flow, but something to disguise it a little bit might be possible. Without actually impeding the flow too much, because you don't have to come out very far because the sheet pile is doing the hard work. Just a thought.
Yeah, our main goal is to maximize the conveyance of the creek channel so that we can reduce the flood risk by as much as we possibly can within this very limited spatial area. We don't want to have steep vertical walls on either side. If we can avoid it, we would like to retain as much of the natural planted creek channel as we can. So with that in mind, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to keep the creek as open as we can. And by placing rocks at the base of the sheet pile wall, we're reducing the capacity of the channel. So I guess, maybe after 5-10 years of seeing how the creek adjusts, once we do the initial grading, we might decide we could try some features like that and see what happens, but it does potentially take away from the flood capacity.
Yeah.
Sure.
Gerhard, could
And
you?
just, I have one last question,
go
Mark,
ahead,
if I
go ahead.
could. Yeah, I understand that. It was just I figured that'd be the answer. There's a mention of the drawings about access. I assume heavy equipment access, but I couldn't find it where actually that access is. Is it next to the bridge?
Yes, there's an existing gate in that short 4-foot black chain link fence directly opposite the parking behind the post office. So we would make use of that existing gate, and that would be the main access for all the heavy equipment, grading and rock delivery and earth removal for this upstream portion of the project between the concrete channel and Lagunitas Road Bridge.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I think that it's probably not desirable to draw out the effect of the sheet pile, but I think they can be, like covered in epoxy coated tar stuff to like make them not weather and get that nice patina. But like Joe said, I don't think that would be of interest to like keep it shiny. But something that's not in the plans that we could explore is putting some willow staking on the creek side of it. I don't know if that's in the plans. I think there's some planting behind it, like at the top of it, between the sheet pile and the existing retaining wall. But the willows, the live willow stakes might scour out depending on the gravel, but we could definitely pound some in on the creek side, and if it gets established, it would mask the sort of the uniformity of that sheet pile.
Gerhard, could you do me a favor and screen share again and pull up the Agabian wall that has all of the metal framing around it, just so Mark and Joey can look and see what will stay up, because really we're talking about 2 feet, probably a foot of which is visible, but so that entire ugly Agabian wall with all of that metal cross hatching is staying. What he's talking about is that bottom foot from the red line to the ground is all we're talking about.
Yeah, I follow. Yeah, and you can see the rocks. The idea that I was thinking, you see the rocks to the right side of that, Mark, off in between the Agabian wall and the next area. There's that sort of like little row of rocks that already sort of hides that. That's what I was thinking. Just extend that up a little bit, and you won't ever see this.
So keep in mind too that this photo was taken just recently after we've had all this nice wet weather. So the water levels in the creek are a little higher in this photo than we're typically used to seeing in the summer. And also the grading plan for the transition from the bottom of the existing concrete channel, which is, significantly lower if you're peeking through at the fish ladder location, slowly tapers up to the Lagunitas Road Bridge location. So at this point in the creek, we're maybe halfway in the middle between the fish ladder and Lagunitas Road Bridge. So, we would lower the existing gravels in the creek bed down, a couple feet here. And then that sheet pile wall, even though we're showing the top elevation of it with this orange flagging, would extend, deep enough down into the creek bed so that any scouring that might happen along this area would still, the sheet pile wall would still protect the existing bank stabilization, both the gabion wall and the concrete wall upstream.
Okay. Thank you, Joanna.
Mhm.
Does anyone else on the ADR have any comments, or anyone who's already commented have more comments or questions? Okay, I will open it up to the public then. If there's anybody in the public that would like to comment on this project, now is your opportunity.
Yes, can you hear me? This is Sterling Sam.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. I own the property at 29 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And my property, in terms of the actual loss of land, is the greatest. I have asked at least 3 times, how much land am I actually going to lose? And I've gotten no response. But from my calculation, I'm going to lose at least 870 square feet. And that's considerable. The only other properties that have any loss of property, loss of land, are 27 and 23. And I've looked at those very carefully. I mean, they don't even lose 100 square feet. So as I have asked the real estate contractor that I met with, Joanna, I've asked them again and again, how much land exactly am I losing? He has not been able to give me a response. And I think that, that I should receive some sort of property tax cut if I'm going to lose that much. I mean, it's potentially as much as 1/10 of my land. So that's one of my, concerns.
Okay, Mr. Sam, so your concerns are obviously very valid and relevant to you, but we are just commenting on the design of the project. We have nothing to do the ADR. We're just advisory design review. So we have
Okay.
nothing to do with taxes, with the implementation of the project. We don't deal with flood control. So we're really just commenting on the physical appearance of the project in this venue.
Okay.
So that would be something to take up with town council. I'm just saying this is not the venue to address your concern.
Okay, because I've asked and asked, I've asked Joanna, I've gotten no response, and I look forward to that. I also would like to know whatever happened to the plan that was submitted by the Corps of Engineers, Department of the Army, in 2005, because if you can see what I'm holding up here, they had a plan in 2005, which was for design of flood walls, retaining walls, and basically the same thing, but they were thinking of actual flood walls, not just sheet pile walls that came up, a few feet from the bed of the bed of the creek. So I'd like to know what happened to that, because they were planning geotechnical borings and then flood walls, on top of that. And that would have given the homeowners much more protection from floods.
So, Mr. Sam, once again, I don't doubt the validity of your concerns, but we have no knowledge of that. We're just commenting on the design of the project here. That's really
Okay.
a question for the town council and I'm assuming the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Fish and Game.
Yeah, because I actually submitted a whole list of questions to the Corps of Engineer. I realize that this is perhaps not the right venue And I sent it in October 2005, 17 years ago. They never responded, of course, which is typical. Okay, I will send off my inquiries to the town council then.
Okay, and I'm sorry we could not have been of some help to you, Mr. Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just speak up to address Mr. Sam's questions and say that I apologize that we haven't gotten to the details yet of the easement negotiation. But we have met on site and our surveyors have extensively surveyed your property, and thank you for allowing us access. And our real estate consultant has been preparing the valuation, and their team will contact you. And I imagine they'll invite me to attend as well, so I can answer any questions you may have at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sam.
Thank you.
Does anyone else in the public have any comments, questions, or concerns?
I see no raised hands.
Okay. So I will then bring it back to the ADR for recommendations. For me, first of all, thank you to the project team that's doing this work. I certainly hope and believe it will help out Ross immensely when it comes to floods. We appreciate your work and expertise. The only thing I saw on it that would be worthy of my comments is whether the chain link fence should be black or silver. I would suggest the maximum height for safety for the residents of the town or anyone else who's walking in the town. As far as black versus silver, I'd vote black, but to me, it's not a big difference because I'm assuming at some point it's covered with vegetation and black might look slightly better, but silver matches the existing fence. So that's my comments. Who would like to go next?
I can go. This is Stephen. I have no comments. Thank you for the presentation and I appreciate the work. And I think it's great that we're doing this and removing that old fish ladder, but I have no design comments.
Thanks, Stephen. Mark, Joey, Laura?
Yeah, I can say similarly. I don't have any additional comments. I think I tend to agree with you, Mark, on the chain link fence. And I might suggest that the town actually extend that black fence up to the transition at Frederick Allen Park, where we would make a transition between black and the existing, anodized fence. But I would go for black, the extent by which we're replacing it for this project.
Thanks, Mark.
No other comments.
I'll go next. I have no problem with the design of the whole project, and I'm very appreciative and grateful for your work on this. It's long overdue at the town. The one thing I think the public all sees, that the public sees, is the fence. And I think if we could afford to make a nice looking fence the entire length of it, it would be money well spent rather than to try to match a chain link fence. If we had a nicely designed fence that went all of the length of this project, it would be something much nicer to look at than chain link. But I don't know if the money's there, and I don't know if that's a preposterous suggestion, but it is what everyone's going to look at, is the chain link fence. So that's my comment there.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joey.
I agree with the previous comments. And I think that a nicer fence would be great. If it had to be the chain link, I think the black kind of goes away more. So that's my preference. And then the one other thing we had touched on in the presentation was where the fish ladder is getting removed, the additional concrete retaining walls that would be put in. And he showed the channel, that the concrete walls that are there now. So just, I like the idea of matching that same pattern that's at the top. That's my only comment.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so Patrick and Matthew, you have unanimous approval, and the preference is, if it's going to be a chain link fence, to be black, and if the town has the money or the initiative to put a nicer looking fence, maybe that can be revisited at some time. But I don't think anybody here wants to delay this project whatsoever for the nice visual appeal that that kind of fence would have if the town decides to put it in. Great. Okay, well, thank you all for your time. We will now move on to the next project.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice evening, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The next project is 36 Glenwood. And I will let the town do a short presentation on the new art studio.
Yes, thank you, ADR group members. Matthew Weintraub, planner. Item 4B is the planning application for the residents at 36 Glenwood Avenue. And the property characteristics, the property is a fairly large 5-acre lot in a 1-acre zone, so it has plenty of room. Substantial, or I should say relatively low slope of 12.3%. So it's not a hillside lot. Between 2008 and 2011, the existing residence and guest house were approved for construction. So it's a relatively new development. The project plan includes constructing a new art studio in the back of the property. Actually, I'll go back to the site plan and show that the project site is in this area here behind the existing residence in the open lawn and the sport court area. And so the project involves removing half of the existing sport court and constructing a new art studio on that location. And the project also involves renovating the landscape at the center of the lawn with a new concrete pond and a bridge and patio and trellis structure. There are no setback encroachments. The project meets all the zoning requirements for floor area coverage and setbacks. Here are some elevations and details. I won't spend a lot of time on them. The architect may want to present more information on the aesthetics, but we can see its quality, materials, and naturalistic appearance. The permits required are a design review permit only for the new construction of the new building, and for the grading and for the new impervious surface coverage. Public notice, as for all design review applications, was 300 feet. No written comments have been received as of now. And that concludes my brief introduction to the project. I'll now stop my presentation. And the project designer is Hart Wright Architects, and the property owner is listed as 36 Glenwood LLC. And I believe Eliza Hart is the presenter and would like to probably present some more information on the project. And I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. I don't really have too much to add. I can just explain the building and what inspired our design. Let's see, do I have these sharing abilities? No. Well, we were just very inspired by Northern California Modern, and this building is addressing the beautiful open site of the lawn, and there is a big wall of glass so that you can look out into the property. It doesn't look on the neighbors at all. It has a high clear story window, so there's no privacy issues. It's just natural wood, metal roof, and a lot of glass.
Eliza, can I talk?
Yes. That's the art studio. This is Eric, the landscape architect.
So I'll just chime in just a little bit. So I think our big move is that the client wanted to reduce the amount of irrigation that he was using. And so we're removing 11,510 square feet of lawn, and we're putting in a native meadow. And he also they wanted, I should say, a water garden. And so hence we put in this round, it's approximately 44 feet in diameter. And it's 3 feet deep, so it's shallow. And so it's really there just to grow water plants. And the cut that we're doing to put that in is we're creating a berm on the back part of it for the meadow. And so the whole thing gets surrounded by this native California meadow. So there's no off-haul of soil. And we're also, with the new art studio, getting rid of half of the tennis court. So, there's more permeable surface there. So that's pretty much, the big move that we're doing in that part of the garden. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone, is that the end of the presentation? Is there anyone else from the team who's going to speak or?
No.
Great. Does anyone from the ADR have any questions or for the applicant or the town?
I just have a quick question for the log trellis. What's the height of that?
I think we're shooting for 8 feet.
Okay.
If I may chime in 1 second, the height that is currently out there that the ADR members saw, we have since lowered it from that previous height. So you guys saw a higher version of what we now intend to do.
Thanks, Eric. Any other questions from the ADR members before I open it up to the public? No? Okay. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this project or ask questions? Okay, I will then bring it back to the ADR for comments. Laura, why don't you go first since you were at the end last time?
Sure. Yeah. I guess, overall, the project looks great. The property is really beautiful and it makes sense to reduce the grass, to reduce irrigation with all the droughts that we are constantly in. I guess the art studio, the layout seems fine. I just wasn't exactly sure the style of the architecture seems very different from the house. So I just wasn't sure what the thought process was with that, if it was matching the shed or something.
So actually, we did kind of match the slope of the roof of the house and pool house. And we were inspired by the kind of overall massing shape. But the owner wanted to have something feel like a woodsy cabin. And it's very casual and rustic. And it's kind of a different feel from the house intentionally.
Okay, great.
And it's around the corner. You can't really see it from the house. It's its own thing.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, and I had thought with the trellis when I was there at site, it just seemed a little bit large, but I think having the height come down will make it feel more appropriate. And the only other small comment or question I had was just with the way the platform at the trellis steps over the pond's coping stone. I wasn't sure if there was a way to make it look more integrated or if there was a reason behind that. But that's just kind of a small detail.
I'll answer that. I think the notion was that they could sit on the edge of the wood deck and put their feet in the pond, basically. And so that's what that was about.
Great. Those are my comments. So that's all.
And would you recommend approval of?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Joey, since we're going in reverse order here.
Okay, overall, I'm supportive of the project. mostly because you actually can't see any of it from anywhere. It's such a large lot. So I think you do, with such a big lot, have the freedom to do a lot more design wise that is of your liking. I had this similar question to Laura's, in that the style of the art studio was so different from the house, but it is kind of its own thing, and it's so far away from the house you don't even see them really together. The one question I had is, why, with such a big lot, are you having that art studio right up against that property line by the tennis court, when you could give a little more breathing room to that adjacent property? Even if they say they don't care, it's really pushed right up against your setback there. I'm just curious what the thinking was there, but overall I support it.
It was to definitely use the tennis court space. So we're taking out half of the tennis court. And so that was the given area to work with. And it definitely has a front and a back. The front is all glass and it's embracing the yard and the garden and the new pond. And the back has a high clear story window that just lets in light and is totally private. It's sort of like hunkering away from the neighbor, but using the land from where the tennis courts were moved.
Got it.
Also-
Thank you.
Also, I think that, we planted this whole garden in front of the studio. So it was really to give space for that. And then we designed this garden back when this whole thing was, so we had planted all those redwood trees behind it. So it's very dense and thick back there. So we figured there was enough room there, and we wanted to have a foregarden in front of the studio.
Great, thank you. So I support it.
Thank you. Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I don't have any real additional questions. I think to comment on Joey's point, if you pull it away from the property line a little further, then you might start to see it in conjunction with the rest of the buildings on the property, which then I would start to question its aesthetic. But given it's isolated, it's sitting in kind of in its own little world. I can appreciate it's doing its own thing. So I don't really have any additional questions. I think everyone else has covered the pieces, and I can support the project.
Thanks, Mark. Stephen?
I agree with everything that's been said. I can support the project as designed without any suggested modifications.
Okay, and I agree with Stephen. So we have unanimous support with no suggestions for changes. Great. Well, thank you to the project applicant for your time, and good luck.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks.
great.
So now, as we move on to 58 Shady Lane, which is very close to my house, I will exit the meeting and turn it over to Joey. So thank you all. And Patrick, once again, it's been a pleasure working with you all these years. Well, or through this pandemic, however long it's been.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bear with me if I'm not as well organized as our fearless leader, but I shall proceed. So I'm introducing the project at 58 Shady Lane, and I'd ask Matthew from the town to formally introduce it and to bring us up to speed on the merits of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Chair and ADR Group members. I will start my presentation. Application item 4C is the planning application for the Wigington residence at 58 Shady Lane. And the property characteristics involve a relatively small and narrow lot in the district. So it's constrained by both the size, which is just a little more than half the minimum lot size for the district, as well as a very narrow lot width, less than 45 feet in a district that normally has a 120-foot width. And it's also in a flood zone. So it has a number of constrictions for development in terms of available space and locations. The project plan involves working with behind the existing single-family home. It involves a second-story addition to the back of the home, It involves converting a portion of the first story to an accessory dwelling unit. And it also involves constructing a new porch, a new rear porch over an existing hardscape patio. And so here we see the floor plan as well, showing the location of the accessory dwelling unit on the first floor. And the project also proposes so here we see the elevations, building elevations, the front elevation on the left, which would not change, and the rear elevation on the right. And you can see that this would be the second story addition that would be constructed at the back of the residence. And here is the new one story, or I should say first story ground level deck that would be constructed above the base flood elevation. So I won't spend that much more time on the project. The permits requested include design review for a construction exceeding 200 square feet of new floor area, a non-conformity permit to allow alterations to an existing non-conforming structure, which is the residence that has non-conforming setbacks, an ADU permit exception to allow for space converted to an ADU to be transferred as an allowance for an addition to the new residence, or I should say to the existing residence, and that would be the second story addition, and a variance to allow for the new deck, which would be non-conforming with respect to the side yard setbacks and building coverage. So the public notice area was 300 feet. We received one comment in response from the owners at 51 Shady Lane, who requested that the project construction avoid impacts on the neighborhood, which they've experienced in the past. That would be something that would be addressed during the building construction phase. The building department would look closely at the construction management plan and approve a final construction management plan at that time. So staff requests that the ADR group allow for public comment, discuss the merits of the project, and provide a formal recommendation to the town council. That concludes my introduction to the project. I will now introduce the project designer, which is Polsky Pearlstein Architects. And I believe either Elizabeth or Jared or both may be available. And I will mention that the owners are Robert and Madeline Wigington. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Jared, are you going now?
Yeah, Matthew, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll keep it brief. Essentially, this is the remodel of the rear of the house. We're creating a JADU, an ADU at the southeast corner. The house needs an upgraded stair. It's actually a very dangerous winder stair. We're trying to upgrade the upper floor to have a reasonable bedroom and bathroom, primary bedroom and bathroom. It's a small sort of symmetrical addition. To my knowledge, the neighbors have been in full support, and we're happy to share screens and show you more details, but I think you could see the extent of the addition fairly clearly from what Matthew showed. So Elizabeth and I are here, and Madeline Wigington are here to answer any questions you might have.
Would all of you like if Jared were to go through the plans specifically and walk us through it, or does everyone on the ADR understand the plans and what is being proposed? ADR?
I think
it's pretty clear, speaking for myself, but I'd love to hear, my questions are going to focus on the roof forms at the rear of the building. And so if we could just hear a little bit about the decision-making relative to the roof forms, it would help me anyway, or it's a question that I will ask anyway.
Maybe Matthew could go back to the 3D images of the rear of the building. What we're proposing at the rear is an addition with a hip roof, maybe with a shed dormer in the middle of that hip. That's the master suite, the primary suite, and two small shed dormers. One's a closet and one's part of the bathroom. So you can see in the southeast view, the shed dormer, I guess I can't point to it, on the left side of the addition is the shower and toilet, and then you can the left side of the center addition is the bathroom. the middle windows and right window is the master suite, the bedroom. And on the northeast view, the shed dormer on the right side of the upper floor is the master closet or primary closet.
So Jared, these are the dormers here, or are you calling this
Yes.
the dormer?
That's the shed dormer, and then the middle is the middle one is a hip roof addition.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's a small shed feature in the middle of that hip roof addition to add a little more light into the primary bedroom.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the ADR? I have a question.
Hey, Joey,
Okay, go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, can someone talk a little bit about the base? I noticed that I haven't spent enough time to look to see if that's an articulation that exists today or an extension of that builds out your deck on the back. And what material is that base?
That base, correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, that base is siding.
Yes, that's the existing
Continues.
house has siding running along the base there. So when we were designing the deck, we thought that we would just continue that material around to make it look more cohesive.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the ADR?
My question, the ADU unit is, the entrance for that is just through the back deck only, right?
Right. Yeah, the right side of the house is driveway for the cars. So you want to have a door, and it's up in the air. So you can, yeah, exactly. You pointed to the entrance to the ADU. Mhm.
I have a question, Matthew. What are the many parts of this that are mandated by the state that we do not have any control over accepting?
So the ADU itself is subject to, would be subject to ministerial permit if it were not part of this larger project. So, so the ADU conversion is something that the owner could do without attaching it to any other part of this project and without going through a discretionary process.
In the house, in the house.
In the house, yes. Mhm.
And are there any
And that,
other?
and that includes growing the house to compensate for the space that is then allocated for ADU, Matt?
So that part is actually a discretionary action. So to take the area that's converted to ADU and grant that as an addition to the main residence, that's discretionary.
I see.
So that's called exception to ADU permit.
I see.
And it was mentioned in the project materials that there was a waiving of parking requirements that I wanted to get really clear with you, because there's not a lot of parking there. So we're having an ADU and a household with 4 to 5 bedrooms. So what's the story with parking?
So there are a number of exemptions to allow for an ADU to be constructed or converted without requiring additional parking. One of those is if the property is located within a half-mile walking distance of public transit stop, and this property is located a half-mile from the public transit stop on Sir Francis Drake. So it does qualify for that parking exemption.
So they don't have to provide any extra parking for an ADU.
That's correct.
Okay. So the next step, Mark, would be to open it to the public. Is that correct? Mark Cushnet. Hello.
Well, he's gone, but yes, that is your next step.
Okay, so I will now open this discussion to the public if there are any people out there that would like to comment on it.
I am seeing no raised hands.
All right. So let's bring it back to the ADR for recommendations. And since I'll go last. Who wants to go first? Stephen?
Okay, I'm happy to. I think that I generally support the project, and I support the notion of making this house larger for the purposes of including the ADU in the house. I don't think, it's not my sense that it negatively impacts the surrounding houses or the privacy of those houses or the Ross environment generally. And I think that the bulk of the house is okay on the site in its enlarged form. I'm uncomfortable with the roof lines at the back because I just admire the ones at the front and their simplicity. And I like the kind of little dormer coming out of the single roof line. And so it's my temptation to try to kind of consolidate the number of roof forms on the back. And so maybe, and this just gets into subjective suggestion, but getting rid of the small peak over the center of the porch, for example, maybe omitting the small dormer at the top. I don't know really who sees this. And so really, maybe it's not our business because those areas of the building kind of are within the buildable area. And so that's really kind of the expression of it is up to the homeowner. But I want to simplify the roof forms because I don't think it's quite yet in step with the simplicity and historic charm of the existing house. But the material selection is harmonious with the house and the details are harmonious. And so I can support the project, and I would just encourage a sharper pencil on the roof lines.
Thank you, Stephen. So that's a support. I'll take you as a support. And then how about Mark? How about you go?
Sure. Yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit, mostly because of the width of the lot, right? We're adding a lot of bulk and mass to the second floor. And while I agree with Stephen, it's not seen from the public vantage point by any means. It is a significant mass up above in both setbacks. The side yard setback on the northern side is extremely tight. And I recognize some of the neighboring properties are a little further away, but I struggle with adding this mass up on a second floor. I would say that the deck, while I appreciate the extension of living space from the same plane as the finished floor, that also brings you up pretty high, probably above a lot of the fences that exist along that northern side and the southern side as well. So the deck in its current status being raised to such a degree in the setbacks, I struggle with that, understanding what the findings are to have that raised. I agree with Stephen. I think it's getting just a little fussy on the roof forms. Like there is a beauty about this home that's simple roof forms, simple moves. And I think in an attempt to articulate these different volumes, I think we've lost some of that simplicity, right? So just even the explanation of, well, there's a little dormer up above that, and then there's another, hip over there, and then this one has a dormer over there, and then there's another move at the base. And while I agree with Stephen, it's not seen from the public eye. It just seems that it's not doing this building any consistency amongst the overall simplicity of the form. So I think taking this mass from the lower floor, right, the square footage from the ground floor, and bringing it up to the second floor in a situation that is a narrow, tight lot where you are in the setbacks on both sides. We have in the past kind of stated we encourage people not to exacerbate a non-conforming condition. And we have two non-conforming conditions, right, with the north and the side yard setbacks, and we're encroaching on both further. So I struggle to find.
Sorry, I don't know if we've been asked. Oh. No, I want to say that I'm consternated by it a little bit too, because I think usually the ask to exacerbate a nonconformity does not come in lockstep with the ADU ask, right? And so that's what's making it a little bit difficult, I think, right? Because are we kind of conflicted about the altruistic purpose of ADUs, and then how is that kind of, how does that mesh with this kind of circumstance, right?
It's still
totally
discretionary
agree.
to transfer the square footage. That's still discretionary for us to
Yes.
decide.
Right.
So you can't comment on that.
Mhm.
Right, and I think
Sorry
that's,
to interrupt.
that's, oh, no, that's okay, Stephen. I encourage the dialogue, and I do struggle with it a little bit. That's why I said, it's not a clear and outright, this is a terrible move. It is the impact of having that ADU on the ground floor is that you're going to either want to build on top of this as a second floor, or you lose that square footage, right? So you could see an ADU in the yard as a single story building. Is that preferable? I'm not really sure. It certainly would respect the north and south boundaries at that upper level a lot more. So I don't know yet whether I definitely think if it moves forward, the simplicity of simplification of the roof forms is going to be important. Just eliminating some of those extra moves. But I struggle to really support this in exacerbating these nonconformities on a second floor, which does have a mass impact on. I think I would say the southern neighbor, less so much the northern neighbor, even though that's really next to the property line. It's very, very tight. So I guess, Joey, I would prefer not to say support or not support until I hear maybe your comments and Laura's comments, just to see if I can go one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. How about Laura? Why don't you go now?
Okay. Yeah, I have similar thoughts. First, I guess, is just, it felt kind of like the front of the building and the new rear addition feel like two different buildings now, even though it's the same materials, just kind of the style of the roofing. So what Stephen had touched on, I agree with his comments on that. And I think, it's a little bit tricky since the ADU is something that is, we don't like, that's not something we comment on, but then it's creating this bump in the volume of the building. Especially on such a tight lot. So, I mean, the same thought process everyone is having. I'm going back and forth a little bit as well. But it seems like it's not making the roof height go up really much, the massing a bit. So I guess I would be okay to support the project, but I would just consider if the roofing could be improved per Stephen's comments.
Okay, so you are, okay, so I'll give my comments now. Unfortunately, I guess I'm going to have to be kind of the bad guy on this one. I really feel like this lot is quite narrow. It's almost half as wide as the one next door to it. And that's why there's a smaller house on it, because it's in scale with the size of the lot. And I think our group has been forced over the last year or so to, we have our hands tied behind our back with these ADUs. We don't really have a lot of commentary that we can make because we have to, you don't even have to come to us for most of them. But there is some discretion here where you're basically taking part of your square footage out of the first floor, calling it an ADU, and then asking to give it back on the second floor, which you're putting this addition on the back side that really is not in keeping with the sweet, very simple roof line of the front of the house. It's like an entirely different house back there. And it is exacerbating a very tight situation that exists already, that's already non-conforming the setbacks. There's no garage already. There were 2 cars parked out in front of the house. When I went there today, all you see is cars. And that's very much against the whole spirit of the design code of Ross, where you see cars in the front of the house. My big question is, why is nobody looking at that little structure in the back of the lot as an ADU? It's charming. It could be expanded and made into a real ADU, and then you wouldn't have the necessity to add that square footage on the top of the house. So that I unfortunately really do not support it as drawn. If it ends up going through, I would suggest that the base of the building had something more substantial than siding, and perhaps it were stone or something that felt like it could bear the weight of that heavy second story. So that is it. I'm sorry, I'm the buzz wrecker here. Should we go back to the ADR for conversation on this, or should we take a tally here?
I think you bring up a good point, Joey, on the unit in the back. I think we actually approved that unit in prior ADR sessions, maybe 8 or so years ago. And it never functioned as a garage, right? I think technically that's supposed to be the garage, but I don't think practically it operates that way. I would see that. I concur. I see that as a much more opportune location on the property, given the linear nature of this site. And there's already a building there. Incorporating something in that as an ADU would seem to make a lot of sense. Yeah, I struggle with. I will say I don't think I can support it in its current status. Both the north and the south encroachments just seem to be, overly done for this particular lot. It's really a strong exacerbation of those nonconformities. So I have to concur with you on that one, Joey.
So at this point, would I take it back and tally the yays and nays? And I think it's 2-2. Is that correct? Stephen and Laura, you're okay to go ahead as drawn?
Well, if everyone had supported it, I would say that I'm okay, but suggest modifications. I'd like to see it again if it's going to go forward. I'd like to see a modification to the design so that the bulk of mass is kind of less ungainly at the back, because I'm uncomfortable with the architecture of it, but I'm generally comfortable, I guess, although you guys have me questioning that, on swapping out the square footage and making the house larger in favor of the ADU. But I'm just looking at the site plan and how long the site is. And I think you make a really good point, Joey, about the garage and the other opportunity for development on the lot, for which ADUs are forgiven up to 4-foot setbacks. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I can kind of generally support it, but would want to see it again. That given your position and the other no position, I don't know if a modification to the architecture could win you over or Mark over. So I don't know how to advise the sponsor, but I guess that, yes, I'm okay with it. I'd like to see it again before it goes to council, but.
So we have 2 no's, 1 like to see it again, and Laura, are you a yes?
But I think to see the revisions to the roof at the back again, yeah.
All right, so Jared, I guess what we're saying here is we definitely would like to see it again before it goes to council. And
I also see the property owner has their hand raised.
Oh, okay, please, go ahead.
Hey guys, am I heard?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a commentary on the garage as an ADU. One of my understandings is that with its location so close to the creek and within the floodplain, I'm not sure if that would ever be permissible as as a living space of any kind, which is one of the reasons we pursued the ADU as part of the unit. I don't know if someone can comment on that, but I think that was part of my understanding.
Is that the case, Jared?
Yeah, the garage, the unit, the building at the back is in the floodplain and would have to be raised 4 or 5 feet to be out of the floodplain. So it's not so easy to do that.
But it is doable. You could have a structure back there that would be out of the floodplain.
If you raised it up,
Okay.
But I just want to make a comment that I think simplifying the roof forms is a good idea. I think we could take a little dormer off the upper floor. We could take off the little gable at the rear entrance. We can certainly simplify that. And happy to come back with a simpler roof form. I am a little concerned, however, that the only thing that makes this house work as a family home is making a little more square footage upstairs and a better stairway. The stair is unsafe. So is it the feeling of the ADR that if we simplified the roof forms and came back with that we have a chance to move forward, or is that not going to work?
Would each of you like to comment on your current position on what would work?
Sure, I will first. Sure. I think, Jared, the roof is 6 and 12 at the front, and 6 and 12 for the very small bit at the peak, and then it becomes 2 and 12, and then there's a hip riding above the 2 and 12. And I don't know if there would be enough height within the 2 and 12. I guess not, huh? But if it could just be a big ass shed dormer of 2 and 12, that would be great. But I guess you can't quite eke out enough head height towards the extremity. Is that right?
Well, I mean, we're happy to play with it. I think it got a little busy. I concur with the ADR, and I think we can simplify the whole rear to be more in keeping with the front. So I don't think that's an untenable or
for me, it would have to be severely so. Like I'd have to say, wow, I don't know what's original, what's not. I'm so stoked by the back of this looking like the front, kind of. But yes, for me, you have a chance of a yes with that as a tenant.
Okay.
Laura?
Yeah, no, I agree. So it would be a chance of a yes, for sure.
Mark?
Yeah, I would always be willing to see it again. You guys are masters of your craft, and I'm open-minded enough to see it again. I think in that modification of roof lines and simplification, as you guys are talking about, one would hope that the massing is less prominent. So however you articulate that, I think the effort here, the challenge that I'm seeing is that it's presenting itself, to some degree, the roof forms, as a pretty substantial mass. So what I think Stephen is hinting at is the beauty of the front of the home today is that second floor is kind of hidden to some degree, right? It doesn't present itself as an extremely large mass. So I would challenge you to figure out a way to to do that, so that this additional square footage up top doesn't present itself as a large box that is hitting the extremes on both north and south property lines. But I'm always open-minded enough to see another take at it.
Okay, so I'm probably, unfortunately, the most negative on this, but it looks like you have 3 people who are saying, go ahead and try again and see what the roof line looks like in the back. I'm kind of fundamentally opposed to having an ADU in the house and then trading it for more square footage in the house, in a house that's already overbuilt and already has nonconformities. So I would actually rather see you make that ADU out in the backyard, even if you have to fix that structure and lift it, and then come to us for a smaller variance for a better bedroom upstairs, but not do this kind of dance of calling this an ADU on the ground floor when it's pretty clear that certain openings are going to be opened after we all leave. And that will be a very beautiful and fabulous house, but it just seems disingenuous. So whatever we have to approve based on what the state requires us to approve is one thing. But if it's discretionary by the ADU to say, oh yes, you can take all that square footage and put it on the second floor, that's where I have a problem. But it's there's 3 of us who think that it should come back, and I will respect that. So there you have my feelings on it. Okay.
And the property owner has their hand up again.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Is Matthew Weintraub still with us in this call?
Yeah, right there.
Oh, okay. Matthew, what can you tell me quickly about the process for like approving the transfer of square footage?
Yes, so the process is the process that we're currently undertaking, which is a planning application to request for the construction of the ADU permit and then the transfer of that converted space to an addition to the main residence. So that's the process. Is there more detail that I can provide on that?
Okay, I guess not.
Okay, so I guess the formal recommendation is 3 of us would like to see it back and see that the back roof line is a little more in keeping with the front roof line. And one of us just is not comfortable with the transfer of the square footage from an in-house ADU to the
I think they need to
upstairs.
vote on the transfer of the square footage.
Pardon me?
Oh.
That's okay.
Say that again?
No, she was just speaking to her husband. It's okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think, Matthew, have you recorded what our decisions are in this matter?
Yes, we have your comments. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready
Hold on,
to
it says I'm not
proceed
muted.
to go on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can all hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it looks like the property owners still have their hands up for the item that we are just concluding. I want to make sure that they don't want to provide further comment.
Hey, thanks. It's this is Bobby Wigginton. Thanks for hearing us out here. I'm hearing a little bit of a echo, unfortunately. So my wife and I are on 2
Sorry,
separate
guys,
devices.
I cannot mute this. I don't know why it's not working. I'm really sorry, everybody.
No worries.
Look, we're drawn to the town because we want to raise our family there. We think the neighborhood's gorgeous, and it's been our dream to live in this. We bought this home with full confidence that such a plan could be approved, not by anyone's direction, but other than just we really love the area, and we appreciate you hearing us out. We don't want to change the architecture. We don't want to touch the front of the home. And we're happy to, revisit this with you at another time.
Thank you. Madeline, do you have your hand up still? Would you like
I don't
to-
use Zoom a lot, so sorry, guys. I have my hand up, but not intentionally. So I'm gonna try to put it down.
That's okay. Thank you. And I'm sure you will come up with a plan that works well for everyone. And
We will.
is there anything else I should be doing, Mark or Matthew, to finish up this issue, this project?
No, I think we've gone through all the necessary motions, and everyone's had their input. And if you just want to close the item and move us on to the next, I think we're ready.
All right. Okay, I'm closing this, and thank you for your presentation, Jared and Madeline and Bobby. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next The next item is 21 Fernhill. And I am going to ask Matthew to present it to the ADR and to the public.
Thank you, Chair and ADR group members. This is the planning application for the Haswell residence at 21 Fernhill Avenue. The property is a corner lot that does meet the minimum lot size. It's relatively flat. It's not in a flood zone. That pretty much sums up the property, the existing property. The project plan is to construct a new pool behind the existing residence. As shown, most of the existing lawn area behind the existing residence is located within a setback area. So the pool is proposed to be located within the rear setback, as far away from the property line as possible. Also shown in the rear yard is a future ADU. There is an accessory dwelling unit permit application submitted for this property. That's a ministerial application that would not be subject to discretionary review, but it is shown for information purposes, so that the ADR group can evaluate the entire project, including the knowledge that there's an ADU applied for in this location. Part of the project is also to renovate the exterior of the existing single-family home. So we see the existing elevation on the bottom and the proposed elevation on the top. So essentially transforming it from a more modern character to a more traditional type of architecture. And I'll just kind of flash through the elevations to get a sense of how that change would occur on each of the elevations. And lastly, here is the elevations for the accessory dwelling unit, just for comparison with the main residence. Again, the ADU is not subject to design review or to accessory or to discretionary review. It is shown for reference only though, so that the ADR group can understand the entire project. So the permits requested include design review permit to alter the exterior of the existing residence and for the grading and new landscape impervious surface. A variance is requested to construct the new pool within a setback. And separately, an ADU permit is requested for administrative approval of the detached ADU. The public notice area was 300 feet. No written comments have been received. And so to conclude my introduction, staff requests that the ADR group allow the public comment, discuss the merits of the project, and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project. And the property owners are Stephanie and Russ Haswell, and the project designer is Polsky Pearlstein Architects. And I believe Jared is here, as we know, and Laura, I believe, is also here with Pearlstein Architects. And the Imprints Landscape Architecture is also the applicant. So that will conclude my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Jared, would you like to introduce the project?
Certainly. This is a sort of reworking of the floor plan with a very minor addition on the west side and changing the sort of look of the house to a more traditional house with different colors and different materials, different windows and doors. I think we're happy to share 3D images if you'd like, but I think it's pretty straightforward. And they would love to have a pool. The only place for the pool, because the house is sort of set in the middle of the lot rather than towards the street, is the pool as shown. We've minimized the pool as much as we possibly can, the distance from the pool. We've maximized the distance from the rear property line to the pool. And the ADU it's ministerial, but it will be Stephanie Haswell's father's place to live, and truly an ADU. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jared, could you show the elevation or a 3D image of that spiral staircase, that part of the building? Just, I noticed that, and I was wondering what there's a
Yeah, Laura,
on-
can you show that, Laura? Can you turn on your sound? You're muted.
Okay, can I share my screen?
That'd be great.
Okay.
You should have the ability to.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So you want to go to the back where the spiral stair is?
Yeah.
Just, yeah, sort of curious about that. Okay. Is that a form of egress or?
Well, that's the primary bedroom on the second floor. So it's just a way for them to get down to the deck area from their bedroom.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else in the ADR, any other members have questions of Laura or Jared?
I have a quick question. I couldn't understand, or maybe it's not in the documents, what the underside of the eave material, what the material is there.
Well, this is all existing for the house.
And so the underside currently, I don't know, is it plywood or is it TNG? I don't know.
I'm sure, I know it's wood,
I think
but I don't,
I think it's TNG, but I can't recall.
yeah.
It's
But
the
if you're
existing.
not modifying it, I guess it's not part
No,
of.
it's the
progression
existing
of-
roof, right.
Yeah, understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, one quick question. So when I looked at the staking of the pool, there are two different colors of ribbon there. Was the second portion intended to be the spa stair section? Is that what I understood?
Maybe Brad can answer that.
Yeah, Brad,
This
I
is
can
Brad-
see.
This is Brad. I staked the pool. I was asked to stake the pool and then the patio that was in the setback. So the pool is staked in red and the patio area that's in the setback is staked in green.
Okay, so that's the section that would be kind of abutting up to the ADU. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that
Brett?
part of that patio was staked in green.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Brad, would you like to give a presentation of the pool and the landscape improvements?
Sure. The pool, we pushed it as close to the house as we thought that made sense, and we kept the pool very narrow. The property has dense hedges around all sides of it and is very private. And there's some large palm trees. I don't know if all of you or any of you made it to the site, but we wanted to respect the hedges and we wanted to respect all these beautiful palm trees. So, you know, it really just got pigeoned into this space. So we went with long and narrow versus pushing towards the shared property line right there. And the plans were shared with that property line, the Gambles, and they were supportive. And on the other side of the hedge is their garage. So that's not their primary living space. And this just seemed like what made the most sense to us.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Any of the ADR members have any questions of Brad or Jared or Laura?
I have one more. The material, Brad, that where the palm trees are, just on the, I guess, southern side of the pool. What are we looking at there?
It's
Is that some
planting. It's
mulch?
just kind of a layered planting scheme that provides more separation and privacy.
What I'm looking at is brown in
I think that's just a
in the
model. If you
rendering
go
here.
back to my landscape concept plan, it has a planting plan.
Okay. And then the pool equipment location.
That's adjacent to the garage. Laura could probably spin around here and it is right there,
Got it. Thank you.
kind of tucked under that window with a roof and then completely enclosed. And that
great.
conforms to
Thank-
all setbacks as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about the materials of the remodel of the house, the exterior materials or colors?
I mean, I just have a question with that spiral staircase. It just kind of sticks out. It doesn't really look like it matches what's happening with the house and the balcony. So I guess just curious what the design of that was.
Jared or Laura?
Well, we want to go ahead, Laura.
Well, I was going to say that we have these, because it's for purposes of being a long lasting stair, it's metal and then wood treads. But we have black accents throughout the house. So it just seemed like an element that is different enough from the rest of the architecture that could be one of these accent colors versus the white.
We also explored having the stair be a traditional stairway from the upper level. And it ended up, the vertical distance was so much that the stairs ended up way out towards the pool and cut off access to the side yard, and we couldn't obviously run the stairs in front of the windows of the lower room. So it just pushed the stairs so far out, and then the owners just wanted these to be kind of hidden minor stairs that just provide access to the pool from the master, where people aren't going up and down those thinking there's some main access into the house.
Okay, any more questions from the ADR? If not, I'll open it to the public. Are there any questions from the public regarding this project?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, so I will bring it back to the ADR for recommendations. Who would like to start? I'll go first.
I can jump in. Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Okay. I have no problem supporting this project. I feel like the encroachment of the pool into the setbacks is mitigated by the fact that it's on the Gamble's driveway, and it's not really close to any of their living spaces, and it's already well vegetated. And we can't really have anything to say about the ADU anyhow, but the placement of it is on a street, and it also doesn't really affect any neighbors because across the street is also kind of not a living area of that property. So I feel like if there's a place to put an ADU, that's probably a good place. And I'm supportive of the change in appearance of the home and the finishes and the colors. I think it will be very attractive. My one kind of the bee in my bonnet is that spiral staircase just seems really out of character with the house, and it's just not very attractive. I don't even know if you need it, but that's pretty much the only problem I have with this project, and I can support it. So who is next?
I can go. This is Stephen.
Okay.
I agree with you, and I can support the project with everything as designed, including the exception, or I don't know if it's a formal exception, but the placement of the pool outside of the buildable area, I think is supportable for the reasons that you suggested. It doesn't seem like it will bother anyone given its placement. So I could support the project exactly as proposed with the omission of the spiral staircase. I completely agree that it seems out of character. I just think it doesn't. I think we can refer to the design review standards whereby it says that we should use high quality materials. And I just don't think that in this case, it represents high quality materials when viewed in conjunction with the rest of the vocabulary. So I think that there's a defense in code to say why it's just kind of not appropriate. But anyway, someone could argue that point, but I also just think it sticks out. It's just not very attractive.
Okay, Laura?
sorry, he's on mute. Yeah, I think the volume, I guess we can't say anything about the ADU. Just makes it feel a little built up. But yeah, I looked at where the neighbors were with the pool location and the driveway. So otherwise they'd have to put the pool in the front yard, and that's not really what anybody wants to do. So I think it makes sense in this location to allow it. And, you know, I thought the architecture, the style, that the Palm Springs vibe with the palm trees on the property was really interesting. So I'm glad that they're keeping a lot of the existing palm trees. Makes this property kind of different from Ross, but, you know, unique. And they've swapped out the style of the architecture for something that's more Ross. But again, the one thing that really stuck out to me was that spiral staircase. So it just doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the architecture. So I think those were my only comments.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I can generally support the project. I think that fantastic job in freshening up the home from a aesthetic standpoint. I concur on the spiral stair. I actually have a, you know, I'm not sure a concern is really the right way to put it, but in general, you know, I always look at decks on the second floor of a home as somewhat suspect as far as privacy goes. This one is relatively narrow, so I don't think someone's going to spend a lot of time out there. But I think, I wasn't able to get up on that level, but I think you can start to see the Gamble's home on the second floor from that second floor deck. So I'm always a little bit hesitant to support the sort of second story decks within sort of tight property lines. But in this particular case, I think it's okay. The stair, you know, I concur with the rest of the ADR members. It is a little bit of an unusual choice. Doesn't seem to fit. I also understand you were trying to make it tight and not have something that juts down into the majority of the property. Is it necessary? Probably not. So I would probably also concur to eliminate it. The rest of the project is quite nice. One last question I forgot to ask was just, I saw a number of solar panel indications on the drawings. I was curious why they weren't facing south. On some of the southern facing roofs, I saw they're sort of facing east-west. It was just, for me, that was just a personal curiosity. But I strongly encourage you guys to put solar where you can. We don't see enough of it here in Ross. I think those are my comments.
Okay, so what I can tell is that we have 4 people supporting the project, 4 people recommending the removal of the spiral staircase, and a strong preference for solar as much as it can be used. Are there any other comments, ADR, that we need to provide the applicants with? All right, then I think we recommend you go forward to the town council with those comments. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew, is that all you need for the official recommendation?
Yes, thank you. It's very clear, unanimous support with the recommended condition that the spiral stair be removed.
Yes.
I do see a hand raise. I'm sorry to jump in there. I see.
I don't see that. Oh, Russ Oswald.
Hi, this is Russ.
Yeah.
Thank you guys all for the feedback. Mark, I just want to let you know, Mark Fritz, you can't see the Gambles from the balcony because that's where the bedroom is. So just want to put that at ease for you. That was
I
it.
appreciate that. Thank you. Yep, appreciate it.
Great. Okay, even better. So good luck, and it's going to be a wonderful project. Thanks for the presentation, and I think we will move to the next thing. I think we're almost to the end of the meeting. Thanks all of you for your presentation of that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Matthew, what's next?
So the next item on the agenda is conceptual advisory design review. We have no items. And Following that will be communications by staff. The next scheduled regular meeting will be February 15th. And do the ADR group members have any communications?
No, just a big
No, just
thank
our-
you for Patrick.
Yeah,
And
I would second
goodbye.
that.
And a good luck.
Maybe I'll come back and tune into some ADR meetings. just to
Oh,
watch you guys
yeah.
do the work.
If you're lonely on Tuesday nights, just come visit us, okay?
Well, Patrick, if you get any good tips for what we can be doing better, let us know.
Sure.
I don't
Did
think we
Mark?
can get any better here, though.
Yeah, well, thanks for your service. And I don't know if Mark K has left the room altogether. Are you still here, Mark?
No, he left.
Okay.
Enjoy his rest of his evening. So if you'd like to adjourn the meeting, I will stop the recording.
Should I do that? I would like to adjourn the meeting. Would all of you agree?
Yep, we can second that.
Okay,